Today we're looking at a gray ink by Caran Infinite Grey. Hi, I'm Adam and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, there's timestamps down below, but if you've got the time, I would appreciate you checking out the entire video. If you'd like, you can follow me over on Instagram as an ink guy. Also, if you're new here, I do fountain pen ink reviews daily, so I would invite you to subscribe. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this pilot vanishing point with a medium nib, wrote with it for a day, and used it to take my notes for this video. In order to standardize, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper in this first writing sample. There will be more writing samples on different papers later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X 450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X 750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer some very nice shading in the writing. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, great shading in this writing, 7 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, still great shading here, 10 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both do show us color variation more in the extra fine than in the medium, which is what happened in the writing. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread. It has halo the entire way through. No sheen, some shading, a little bit. Look at how Caran looks compared to Infinite. So there is some shading. The extra fine is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, no halo, no sheen, some nice shading, 12 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, some shading, a little bit, not tons, 17 seconds to dry. Now the Scrubby for both shows no color variation, although we do get little bits in the writing. And Rhodia, with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer bits of shading, not tons, but it's there. Extra fine is the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, a very nice shading in this writing, although most of it is much darker than the lighter spots. So the shading is seen through some of the light spots that occur. 10 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, same problem with the shading. Some lighter spots that occur that show some shading, but not a lot is happening here. 14 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both shows no color variation, although we do get some in the writing. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see a very, very light purple at the bottom, and it's pushing its way up, and then we get a brown. And a nice dark brown at that. But at the very top of that brown, you see a very dark blue. That line, a nice dark blue. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And that light purple on the bottom, very much forming a line, showing that it might want to be a resistant part of this ink. We then get the brown, which does look like it's not traveling as far, and oddly, it doesn't look as dark. The blue line at the top, a little less noticeable, but it's still very much there. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I'm not sure if I would use this in a note-taking situation because it's got that weird blowout spot happening on the capital H. I probably wouldn't use it just to be on the safe side, but I could see how somebody might decide to use it. Now, that's not surprising when you see what happens with water, which is reactivating and lifting most of this ink off the page. That light purple that was at the bottom of the chromatography still seems to be there. Pen flush is starting to break that light purple down. You start to see the white of the paper coming through just a little bit, meaning pen flush is the most you should ever need to get it out of your pen, although all I needed was water. The 1/3 bleach solution completely removes it from the paper. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Now I'm going to link a video where I show how I test it and how I calculate the data. Caran Infinite Grey has a viscosity of 1.89, making this a wet ink. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. I find this by using my writing samples that were done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. Caran Infinite Grey has an average dry time of 12 seconds, making this a fast drying ink. Instead of finding inks that look like Caran Infinite Grey, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went for a nice blue, and I chose Krishna's Causal. The second writing sample is done on yellow Rhodia, Levenger, and White Lines paper. Here we're looking at the yellow Rhodia paper. We're not looking for performance so much as tone changes that we may go through for having a yellow backdrop. And we see it does get a little bit darker in the medium, and that's about it. Other than that, it's largely unchanged, which is kind of surprising to me. Having looked at the chromatography, I really thought that this was going to go ahead and darken it and kill any chance of shading with this ink. Levenger paper. With no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, almost no shading, but if you look at the tone of the D compared to the TE in Infinite, very different tones. So there is an ability to shade here. The extra fine is a tad lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, some very nice shading that's going on. 6 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. Again, there's shading. If you look it over from left to right, it definitely goes from lighter to darker, and brown goes from darker to lighter. But there's not a lot going on. 8 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both are showing almost no color variation, but that's kind of what's happening there. Even though, yes, there's spots of it, it's not very standout. White Lines paper. Now we do get a lot of bleeding in heavy on the medium, cause a lot of show through, not on the extra fine. Now, I'm not sure about using the back of the page of the medium. The extra fine you should be okay. Doesn't touch the page underneath. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, spots of shading in the writing, 4 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 6 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows some color variation. The medium shows none, and that's what we got. And that is all that I have for writing samples. So what do I think of Caran Infinite Grey? It does offer tone variation, and it does offer some shading from time to time. It is a standout ink as a gray, but it doesn't appear like pencil, which is the way I prefer my gray inks to look. Great performing, very nice tone, not the right gray for me. While I love Caran inks, this is one that I would pass on. So what nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? I found that very wet pens made it look like it was really a faded black. It didn't look great as a gray, but a medium flow or dry medium or broad nib really did show that it was gray with some decent shading. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and if it's your first time here, I'm going to remind you, if you enjoyed it, subscribe. Thanks for watching.